Okay, so is all South African hip hop really South African hip hop? And the answer, it's a loud, controversial, unapologetic no. Not everything that comes from South Africa is rooted in South African culture. Not every rapper born here represents here. And if it doesn't sound like home, if it doesn't reflect our context, our textures, our rhythm, our story, can we really call it South African hip hop? So spoiler alerts. Some of your favorites, yes, the big ones like Nasty C and A-Reece might not actually belong under that South African hip-hop banner the way you think they do. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it, right? Before you fight me in the comments and say, I'm dividing hip-hop, whatnot, let's define this thing properly. Let's define what South African hip-hop is, right? So rapping in English, being born in SA, wearing drip, shooting a music video in Joburg or PTA or Kwamaimai, that's not SA hip hop. That's surface level. Aesthetics don't create genre identity. Culture does. Hip hop globally is cultural first, musical second. In South Africa, it's musical first and then cultural second. We're the only nation that disrespects our culture when it comes to music. We choose a different culture. But anyway, if your music carries no cultural markers, no local influences, no South African worldview, then what makes it South African hip hop? So let's break it down. Hip hop in South Africa historically includes local languages like Zulu, Venda, Tswana, Xhosa, Afrikaans, Tsotsitaal, and many more. Local slang, local rhythm patterns, local samples, social commentary that reflects this land, these streets, the struggle, local swagger, production influences from Kwaito, Bubblegum, Mbaqanga, Bacardi, Gqom, etc. Right? So basically, it must sound, feel, breathe and exist in the South African experience. If your music could have been made in Atlanta, Toronto, or Los Angeles unchanged, then maybe, just maybe, your music isn't South African hip hop. It's just hip hop made by a South African. There's a difference, right? So here's where things get tricky. We live in a globalized world. Everybody's influenced by everybody, right? We grew up listening to Lil Wayne, Drake, J. Cole, Kendrick, and that influence is very valid. No one is saying you weren't supposed to listen to those people, but influence doesn't mean abandonment, right? There's a difference between inspired by and replicating, between evolving from and copy and pasting, between global fusion and cultural erasure. So South Africa has an identity, a flavor, a sonic fingerprint, and when major artists decide to chase a global sound, abandon local elements, and detach themselves from South African narratives, the result is music that may be good, but is it South African, or is it just internationally shaped hip-hop made by a South African passport holder, right? And this brings us to two names that always heat up the conversation, Nasty C and A-Reece. Before you throw your stones, understand something. This is not about talent. They're insanely talented. They're successful, influential, top tier in their craft, right? I'm giving them their flowers. But the discussion today is not, are they good? The discussion is, do they make South African hip hop? And based on cultural authenticity, not exactly. So let me unpack it, right? Nasty C is arguably the most internationally shaped rapper in the country, right? And that's not hate. It's literally his brand. It's his ambition. He said it himself in interviews. He doesn't want to be boxed in by the South African category, and that's fine, right? Let's break it down. Why he's not necessarily South African hip-hop in a cultural sense, his sound is 95% American influenced, right? Production, cadence, flows, ad-libs, every song structures, they reflect Atlanta, LA, and mainstream American rap, not SA's underground, not SA's cultural rhythms. If you muted his accent and played his music to someone who didn't know him, 90% of people would assume he's from the US. And even his accent is so American, right? You only hear Pumala Mzansi makakhuluma isiZulu, but minimal use of South African languages or slang. There's close to no Zulu, no Tsotsitaal, no Spitori, no vendor phrases, nothing that roots us in a specific community. Nasty only started now using a bit of South African phrases because it became a thing. We started talking about it. And yes, English is fine, but even with English, local artists usually sprinkle local identity. Nasty C rarely does that. Themes are universal, not local, right? Nasty C raps about industry politics, global dreams, heartbreak, flex culture, international positioning, all valid topics, but mostly detached from the South African lived experience. He rarely speaks on issues like township realities, racial dynamics, local identity, youth culture, our slang, our social struggles, our humor, our energy. You know what I'm saying? His influences overshadow his origins. From delivery to vocal tone, his musical references is Lil Wayne, Drake, Young Thug, and the lineage is there, right? But where is the lineage to Pro, Squatter Camp, Double HP, Zola, Ben Sharper? So what is Nasty C really? He's a globally styled rapper from South Africa, not necessarily South African hip hop. There's a difference. And it's okay. It's not an insult. It's just a classification, right? Now let's talk about Reece, the boy doing things, a lyrical genius, a cult favorite, one of the most influential artists in this continent. But again, does he fit the category of South African hip hop? Not fully. One, his sound is heavily American soul rap inspired. A-Reece leans into the 90s, 2000s US soul samples, jazz loops, R&B infused hip hop, Dreamville style beat selections, and like a flow reminiscent of the US backpacker scene. You know what I'm saying? Musically, he's more in line with J. Cole, you know, Mick Jenkins' Rashad, than with South African hip hop lineage. And minimal cultural references. Reece rarely uses vernac, South African slang, township stories, local political references, cultural expressions, regional rhythm patterns. His music is introspective, but not culturally grounded. His world building exists in like a borderless hip hop universe, right? Reece's content focuses on like label issues, artistry, trust, loyalty, fame, love, betrayal. Again, very, very good topics, but not culturally specific to South Africa. His sound could exist anywhere. This is the big point that I'm trying to make, is that Reece's sonic identity is so globally neutral that his music could come from Chicago, Toronto, London, Johannesburg, anywhere. And if your sound floats freely across global borders, where is the South African anchor? So what is A-Reece? He is a poet, lyrically gifted, globally styled hip-hop artist based in South Africa, not strictly South African hip-hop. And again, that's not hate, it's just classification, because if Drake moved to South Africa and made the same exact hip-hop that A-Reece is making, keep in mind, A-Reece sounds completely like Drake. There's a lot of songs where he sounds like Drake. So if Drake made that same exact song and stayed in South Africa, does that make it South African hip hop? No, because he's not born in South Africa. So what makes a song South African hip hop is when you're born in South Africa. That does not make sense, because even a Drake who was born in Canada moved to the American industry and still said words like Crody, still referenced things from Canada. He still put on his home. He still said the Six Side, Toronto. He still put that on. You know what I'm saying? And South African hip hop isn't defined by nationality. It's defined by cultural imprint. Artists who embody that are like Proverb, Zola, Duk Singanga, Double HP, Questa, KO, Blackie when using Durban influences, Java when blending, the Zulu musicality with, you know what I'm saying, Focalistic, Casper Nyovest. These artists incorporate the language, the slang, the street vibe, the sonic fingerprints, the rhythm that only a South African can have. You know what I'm saying? We should flex about this. We should brag about this. We should brag about being South African. We should feel proud. We should put this across to the world and be like, yo, Drake, you can't do it like this. But Drake listens to Nasty or A-Reece and he's like, I could definitely do it like this. And South African hip-hop is Tsotsi swagger, Mzansi storytelling, township energy, local languages, unique drum patterns, cultural references, SA, social commentary, it's Kwaito, it's Bacardi, your local house. It's a sense of like a place that feels home. You know what I'm saying? If your music doesn't have place, then it can't have a nation. You feel me? The problem isn't the artists. The problem isn't the labeling. We keep calling everything South African hip hop just because it's made in South Africa, but that's lazy classification. Instead, maybe we need new labels. Global hip hop, but South African origin. SA cultural hip hop. Hybrid South African rap, or international style hip hop from South African artists. You feel me? We should brand these things because not everything is South African hip hop. And that's what's making us fight. That's what's making us go at each other in the comments. These labels help us respect the artists without erasing the culture, because we can't call A-Reece South African hip hop. That's not SA hip hop. Because if we call everything South African hip hop, we lose the ability to protect the cultural identity of the genre. And some people don't want to protect the cultural identity of the genre. Okay, then separate yourselves. Separate yourselves. Call it a different thing. It's just the South African making international hip hop. And once the culture dissolves, you're left with just sound that could come from anywhere. You couldn't tell if this is from South Africa or this is from where. You can't tell. And this is what I like about America. People are like, yeah, but hip hop is from America. In hip hop, you can tell that this is from New York. In hip hop, you can tell that this is from Chicago. This is from here. This is from here. And I know a lot of people are going to say, but even in South Africa, you can tell that this is from Pitori and this is from Durban. Yes, that started after the generation of A-Reece and Nasty C. The time it was A-Reece and Nasty C who were the big guys, you couldn't tell that, oh, A-Reece is from PTA. Oh, Nasty C is from KZN. No, you couldn't tell. You can only tell today by hearing Muchin. Oh, Muchin is from PTA. 25K, oh, 25K is from PTA. But Reece didn't do that. Reece is not the person who made that happen. And he was supposed to be the person who made that happen. But if Nasty C and A-Reece dropped the same music, but did it while living in Canada or the US, would you still call it South African hip hop? If the answer is no, then you already know the truth. There are South African artists, but they don't necessarily make culturally South African hip hop, and that's okay. But let's stop pretending the label fits where it doesn't. Now, it's your turn, man. Drop your comments, argue with me, debate me, educate me, fight me if you must. But damn, you just keep it respectful. Peace.